Round 3 of the Rugby Championship, Springboks versus the All Blacks, probably the most hyped game since the Rugby World Cup, and all we can talk about is the farcical nature of the game and the diabolical refereeing. It's pretty clear living on my side of the world, All Blacks fans are feeling really hard done by this morning. The calls being made were terrible for everybody. Like the first one for Fassi, Springbok fullback, there's no way, in no world is that a yellow card. There wasn't even a ruck or breakdown, it shouldn't have even been a penalty. And the most frustrating call for New Zealand fans, the Bonambi try. Definitely not a try. Never had control of the ball. Not sure how they missed that at an international level, and I've got no idea why the TMO couldn't intervene and correct that decision. Tungafasi's yellow card, just a penalty at best. Definitely not a yellow card. It was a 50-50 call, swum down the edge of the maul for maybe half a metre. The entire officiating was just farcical.
Whoa! Calm down, mate! Have a kick out, mate!
Even in the last 5 minutes, Malcolm Marx's strip or Artie's pilfer could have gone either way, and it just seemed to always be opposite to what you would expect. Plenty of positives for the Boks to take out of this one. Their defence inside their own 22-metre zone for me was the highlight. The All Blacks would throw waves of attack them, and the Springboks just wouldn't crack. It really was world champion defence.
She's the most beautiful man in world rugby.
Also, their bench was enormous again. The bomb squad, Lowe, Quagga, Etzebeth, Williams, they really swung the game in the way of the Springboks' favour. It's hard to think of a negative from this Springboks side, especially knowing they've got so many more guns in the holster that they didn't use in this game. It was a good performance from the Springboks, and it's pretty hard to pinpoint some negatives in their game, although I think they'll want to definitely improve their execution heading into next week. They kept trying this really cheeky line-out sequence where they'd punch the ball just outside the far goalpost. The forwards would fold around the corner with a quick second phase play. Then they'd swing the ball back, and it was just their outside backs lined up against the All Blacks fronties every time. The most disgusting mismatches. It's just a shame the ball didn't go to hand, otherwise they really could have burnt the All Blacks. For the All Blacks, this was one of their strongest lineups, and they'll be very disappointed they lost this game. They looked very damaging when they used the ball to beat the man. Hard running, crisp passing. That's how Caleb Clark scored his tries. I think the bench really took away from the All Blacks' performance again. That's another growing trend we're seeing. They sort of fall off in those last 20 to 30 minutes. If you look at the stats from the players, they went missing out there. Discipline killed the All Blacks. A 14-5 penalty count, that's a lot of field position to give away, and sure, you can blame the ref, but that's a lot of chances to adapt to what the referee is calling. It's actually incredible how close they were to beating the Springboks with 70% of the game played down their own end. Emotionally and mentally, it's going to be really hard for the All Blacks next week. They were pretty much full strength in that game, and we know the Springboks are about to rotate in a bunch of fresh, hungry, experienced players. Scott Robertson's definitely got his work cut out for him to get him up for next week's game. Moving on to the Wallabies versus Los Pumas. Look, the Wallabies aren't revamped yet, but it was a step in the right direction. Beating a team away from home, in tough conditions, ranked higher than them, you got to be happy with that result. They definitely grew into the game and started to show those long phases of attack and defence and actually looking quite comfortable. Sure, it wasn't always in the best field position given the conditions, but, those traits were there. Definitely glad Lenny Katau exists, and 6-1 turnover count in the favour of the Wallabies against those stocky Argentinians. I'll take it any day of the week. Pretty sure it was in the first 10 minutes they had 27 phases and went about negative 15 metres, but it's alright, we were able to hold on to the ball for once. The Wallabies still have a lot to work on. Their maul defence, their restarts, playing to the conditions, and box kicks are a bit of a train wreck, but there still were some positives there. While they'll be sad not winning the game, I thought Los Pumas played really well to the conditions. They kept pinning the ball down to the corners and letting the Wallabies essentially dig their own grave. 78% of the game was played in the Wallabies half, and that just shows they played to the conditions perfectly. I also really liked when they ran that late switch or sweep again, but they just didn't do it enough. As the Wallabies grew into the game, Los Pumas grew out of it. Their set piece struggled throughout the game, and they also just gave it away at the end. And I think a lot of that was those injuries at the end of the game really hurt them. If Carreras was still on the field, would those mistakes have happened? Could they have exited better? Definitely. I expect Los Pumas to have a huge bounce back and the Wallabies to have quite a difficult time next week. Now, one thing I found really interesting and just feel like talking about is at halftime they interviewed Josh Fluke, and he's a Wallabies squad member. Now, I think every Wallabies fan would be talking about how they're always crabbing sideways and they're not deep enough, and it almost seems like they can never get the ball wide because they're just running into each other. And when prompted at halftime, did Joe Schmidt talk about getting the boys a bit deeper? He said the problem's not their depth, but it's actually the ball in flight time when they're passing the ball and how long it's taking to get to the right spot. I just thought that was really interesting. I don't know how I feel about it because when I watch the Wallabies, they're definitely not deep enough, but also maybe it's just the passes aren't as crisp and as direct as they need to be. Anyways, thanks for watching. Lots of videos coming.
And if I do fall down, if I do fall into pieces, put myself together, I'm the new black.